It was raining hard that evening, the kind of rain that seemed to wash away not just the dirt from the streets, but also the dreams from a tired man's eyes. Inside a small, dimly lit house on the corner of Willow Street, Ethan Cole, a 38-year-old single father, stared at the empty chair across his dinner table, the one his late wife used to sit in. Now it was just him and his 10-year-old daughter, Leela, sharing quiet dinners and unspoken worries. But that night, as thunder cracked across the sky, a knock at the door would change everything. Forever. Before we dive into what happens next, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Soul Spark, and leave a comment below, because this story will touch your heart in ways you'll never forget. Ethan Cole wasn't always this broken. Once, he had been a man full of life, a talented carpenter who dreamed of opening his own furniture studio. But dreams don't survive hospital bills, lost jobs, and a wife taken too soon by illness. To make ends meet, Ethan had converted the small spare room in his house into a rental space. It wasn't much, a clean bed, a desk, and a tiny window overlooking a dying maple tree. He'd posted the listing quietly, not expecting much. But that stormy evening when he opened the door, he found a young woman standing there, soaked to the bone, clutching a small suitcase. Her voice trembled when she spoke. "I saw your room listing online. Is it still available?" Ethan blinked, surprised. She looked out of place. Her coat was expensive, her shoes clean despite the mud, and her posture carried the quiet grace of someone who wasn't used to asking for help. "Ah, yeah, it's still available," he said, stepping aside. "Come in before you freeze out there." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides exhaustion, and introduced herself. "My name's Clara." Clara didn't say much about her past. She mentioned she was a college student, studying business at the nearby university, and needed a quiet place away from campus drama. Ethan didn't pry. Everyone had their secrets, and he had enough of his own. All he cared about was getting the rent on time. $500 a month, enough to cover groceries and Leela's school books. But there was something about Clara that puzzled him. She didn't act like a typical college girl. She was polite, humble, and surprisingly kind. She cooked dinner when Ethan came home late from work. She helped Leela with her homework. And sometimes Ethan would catch her sitting quietly by the window, staring into the rain, lost in thoughts too heavy for her young age. One evening, as he was fixing a broken chair in the living room, Leela ran in, excited. "Daddy, Clara bought me a new backpack!" "The one I wanted." Ethan frowned. "Sweetheart, you didn't ask her to, did you?" "No." She said it was a surprise. Clara walked in, smiling softly. She mentioned her old one had a broken zipper. It was nothing. But Ethan could tell. The backpack was expensive. He wanted to ask how a student could afford that, but then he saw how happy Leela was. So he said nothing. Days turned into weeks. Ethan began noticing small changes around the house, things fixed, groceries restocked. The electricity bill mysteriously paid early. When he confronted Clara, she simply said, "You've been kind to let me stay here. I just want to help." Ethan shook his head. "You don't need to do that, Clara. You already pay rent." She smiled again, that same sad smile. Sometimes helping someone feels better than keeping money. Those words stayed with him. Over time, their small home became lighter. Laughter returned. Warmth returned. Leela adored Clara. They'd bake cookies together, read bedtime stories, and whisper secrets. And Ethan, he found himself smiling again. Something he hadn't done in years. Still, something about Clara remained mysterious. She'd sometimes step outside at night, talking quietly on the phone, her tone gentle yet firm. Once Ethan overheard her saying, "I told you, Father, I'm fine. I just need time to understand life on my own." He didn't think much of it then. But he would soon. One morning, Ethan received an envelope at his doorstep. Inside was a notice. The house mortgage was overdue. If he couldn't pay $10,000 in 2 months, he'd lose the house. His heart sank. This home was all he had left, for him and Leela. He tried to hide it, but Clara noticed. "You've been quiet lately," she said one night as they washed dishes. "It's nothing," he muttered. "Ethan, I can tell when something's wrong." He sighed. "It's just money. I'll figure it out." She hesitated, then said softly, "Let me help." He shook his head immediately. "No, you're a student. You've done enough already." But Clara's eyes glistened, almost with guilt. "Ethan, you don't understand." Before she could finish, his phone rang. A local construction company offering him weekend work. It wasn't much, but it was hope. He took it without hesitation. Over the next weeks, Ethan worked double shifts, barely sleeping. Clara helped take care of Leela, cooking, tutoring, doing everything she could. The bond between the three deepened, almost like a family. Then one afternoon, Ethan collapsed at work from exhaustion. When he woke up in the hospital, Clara was there, holding Leela's hand, tears in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me how bad it was?" she whispered. "I didn't want pity," he said weakly. "It's not pity," she replied, her voice trembling. "It's love." And with those words, the walls between them began to crumble. The next morning, something unbelievable happened. A convoy of black cars pulled up outside Ethan's small home. Men in suits stepped out, and with them, a tall man with silver hair and an air of quiet authority. Clara walked up to him slowly, tears in her eyes. "Father," she said. Ethan froze. The man turned to him, extending a hand. "You must be Mr. Cole. I'm Richard Langford." The name hit Ethan like thunder. Richard Langford, billionaire real estate mogul, CEO of Langford Holdings, one of the richest men in the state. Clara was his daughter. Ethan could barely speak. You're her father?" "Yes," the man replied. "She's been living here without telling us. She said she wanted to learn what real life is, not life behind gates and chauffiers." Clara looked at Ethan, her eyes pleading. "I didn't want you to treat me differently. You treated me like a person, not a name." Ethan was silent, still processing. Richard continued, "When she told me about how you helped her, I wanted to meet you myself. You've given my daughter something I never could. Normalcy, kindness, and honesty." He handed Ethan an envelope. Inside was a check, enough to pay off his mortgage 10 times over. Ethan shook his head. "I can't accept this." But Richard smiled. "It's not charity, it's gratitude." Weeks later, the house on Willow Street looked different. Not bigger or fancier, but alive. Clara decided to stay at least until she finished college. She insisted on paying rent still, though Ethan had stopped taking it. Instead, they shared meals, laughter, and dreams. One evening, Clara found Ethan sketching furniture designs on the table. She smiled. "You're really talented," she said. "Why not open your own shop?" He chuckled. "Takes money for that?" "Clara." She reached into her bag and placed a small card in front of him, a business proposal drawn up in her own name. "Then let's make it happen. I'll invest as a partner, not as a billionaire's daughter." Ethan looked at her, speechless. She wasn't trying to buy his gratitude. She was giving him back his dream. And that's exactly what happened. Within months, Cole and Langford Designs opened in a small studio downtown, a partnership built not on wealth, but on trust. Before we reach the ending, if this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Spark for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life. A year later, Ethan stood outside his new shop, holding Leela's hand as customers admired his work. Clara was there too, not as a tenant, but as family. Leela laughed as she painted a sign that read, "Home isn't about where you live, it's about who lives with you." Ethan looked at Clara, the girl who had walked into his life during a storm and brought sunlight where there had been none. Sometimes miracles don't arrive in shining cars or grand gestures. Sometimes they knock on your door on a rainy night, carrying a suitcase and a heart full of untold stories. Because love, in all its forms, is what truly makes us rich. This was Soul Spark, where stories heal hearts, ignite hope, and remind us that kindness still exists.